All right, since we're talking about turbochargers and systems, I will throw this out here very quickly. There we go. Point 10, you're like, oh, where does this 10 come from? I don't even know because I'm skipping around. Pressurization. This is not the pressurization module, but pressurization comes off the turbocharger. So pressurized aircraft. Which is to say, piston-driven modern pressurized aircraft. Use upper deck pressure. Use upper deck pressure for cabin pressurization. If you do have that, then they use a sonic venturi. The use of a sonic venturi limits the amount of air, taken for pressurization. Also, upper deck pressure may be used to pressurize magnetos. So if you have a pressurized turbocharged aircraft, now you're talking about going high, especially if you have a pressurized cabin. Now you're really talking about engines capable of going high, people are capable of going high. But the magneto, that's going to be the weak link because as you get up in altitude and the air is really thin, the air is the insulator in the magneto, and if you start ripping out, you're losing your insulator, then it's not going to go to spark to the nearest tower. It can wander off and start misfiring all around. I had a student who, Juan, who, he didn't tell me, but I think he was like some sort of ferry test pilot for Beechcraft. Because he talked about flying, he's had his Bonanza all over the world. I mean, just, he'd fly his Bonanza over to England. I'm like, how'd you get it here? Watch flew it.
That's the wealthy one with the.
Well, if you got a plane like that, you're wealthy. His name is Juan. I don't know, but yeah. So I don't want to talk about his financial side here, but,
Where does he live?
yeah. But anyway, yeah, he talked about an aircraft that might have been his, at night over the Atlantic, and the thing started misfiring all over the place, and he started losing altitude fast. And you have to wear one of those survival suits. You're allowed to take it off your shoulders, but I don't know who's made the rules. But anyway, he's getting this thing on. He's going in the drink, and he was with somebody else, another ship, and he's telling him, man, I'm going down. Just mark my position. Start calling in. This is how it ends. And he got down really low where the pressure started to increase, and boom, magnetos fired back off again, and now ruined a perfectly good suit, I'm sure.
What's that? How do you pressurize a magneto? Is it like a housing that goes over the top?
Oh, actually, you take the same housing. Glad you asked. Pretty much, it's the same housing, and where these are vent plugs. So you have two vent plugs. You take them both out. This plug here is going to have now you'll make it a smaller one with a much smaller orifice, and then this one will just have a fitting on it, a hose fitting, and that hose fitting just goes over to outlet on the upper deck pressure. You just blast upper deck in here, pressurizes that, bleeds out of here. So, yeah, it's really just a cap conversion. All right, last item here. Oh.
Is there any problem with condensation?
Yes, I almost thought about bringing it up, but yes, there's there is a problem with condensation when you do that. So you are absolutely right. What is this right here? Because it says right there. Sonic venturi. Yep. So if you see that, that's going to the cabin. Right. I just know what it's going to do. There we go.
Cabin pressurization, that's the main pressure in the cabin?
It's not a lot.
And are those cabins have special seals and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like, number one, that they're a pressurized vessel, so the windows are made for pressurization. The like all the inspection panels have the screws. They all have O-rings, a groove with O-rings. They're all O-ringed. They have gaskets. So yeah, the whole thing is.
So once that's established, there's really not a whole lot of volume that goes in there, it just maintains the pressure?
Yeah. All right. The PRT, the Power Recovery Turbine. This is old-timey stuff right here. Also called a turbo compound engine. So I want you to know turbo compound. And as the drawing shows, we have a crankshaft with a single throw. So that was used on what kind of engines? Radial engines. Lawnmower engines. Radial engines. And so off the back, we had a fluid coupling that would attach to a series of gears that would go up to a set of turbines. So on the onset, you'd look at it and go, well, the crankshaft is driving a turbine that does what? But it's actually the other way around. It is coupled so that as the exhaust gases leave, it will turn a turbine, which turns the shaft, which then turns this gear through the fluid coupling, which adds power back into the crankshaft. So it drives from this way down. Turbine wheel drives the shaft. Shaft drives the gears. Gears go through a fluid coupling. I imagine the coupling is so that the engine doesn't drive the turbine. That would not be good. And then adds a little power back into the crankshaft. Let me see, what do we got here? Also called a turbo compound engine. Uses a turbine wheel driven by exhaust gas that directly connects to the crankshaft. Just after World War II, the Wright R-3350 18-cylinder aircraft engine used 3 turbines to recover 20% of the exhaust energy. I don't know what that translates into. So I'd have to know what is 100% of the exhaust energy to figure that number out. Anyway, they're using the Douglas DC-7, the Lockheed Super Constellation airliners. Early designs were a failure and often called, so it's PRT. The mechanics called them a parts recovery turbine. Anyway. Let's see. The 11. Power recovery turbine. Or the PRT. Also called the turbo compound engine. And that is a turbine wheel driven by exhaust gas, obviously. Turbine wheel is directly connected to crank through a coupling. And I think that's about all we need to know about that one. And as Phil would say, your gee whiz information, I believe auto manufacturers are starting to bring this back, or did. I don't know what it is now, but at the time I wrote this several years ago, auto manufacturers are looking to revitalize this concept. The Detroit Diesel uses a flywheel turbine on the DD15, I don't know what that is, to add 50 horsepower and improve economy by 5%. The Ferrari used the PRT to drive a generator that electrically powers the wheels. I thought this was kind of cool. So, called a motor generator heat unit, or the MGU-K. Here, the exhaust turbine, compressor wheel, and generator are all mounted on a common shaft. So you have a turbo driven by with a generator. Recovered electrical energy, so have a battery pack and regenerative battery. Powers the wheels out of a turn through a second device called the motor generator unit kinetic. Generator can also operate as a motor to preemptively spin the compressor to eliminate boost lag. That's your Ferrari. That's on the test.
Sounds like more expensive shit.
Something else to break.
Yeah.
That's demonstrated by SpaceX.